Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to speak here on the next wave of digitization, and also want to remind you basically the tremendous journey that we have already behind us. You look back for the last 5 to 10 years, and then of course provide the outlook, what we personally think, how the world will change in the course of the next 3 to 5, and then also in the next 5 to 10 years. So basically digitization, I just wanted to start off with a couple of facts that some of you might be familiar with and some of you might less familiar with. And one thing, for example, is we live in a world today where already 4 billion people worldwide own a mobile phone. And when you compare that with 3.5 billion owning a toothbrush, that puts some question marks behind some personal hygiene factors, I guess. The other thing is 79% of workplaces today globally depend already on internet and communications. There are some other facts, and one that I would like to point to particularly to is also when you look back at the Arab Spring developments last year, that, for example, in Tunisia, about 90,000 people joined on Facebook for a single protest. Another fact I think that is also quite astonishing is when you look at Monster.com, they already carry a repository of more than 150 million CVs that equals basically the workforce of the United States. So there are a couple of things that really are very, very different in today's world when you basically look back 5 to 10 years. And therefore, I want to be now a little bit more specific when I talk about digitization, what I really mean by that. Because I think there are different definitions for that, or people have a different understanding when they talk digitization. And I think the more traditional or narrow view is that digitization is how we basically improve our current traditional businesses and add an electronic component to it. We move our business towards e-commerce, we introduce email services, we introduce customer self-service, a web page. That is not what I mean when I talk digitization. When I talk digitization, I really talk about disruptive developments in the marketplace. I talk about how new business models that are enabled by digital technology alone, how they basically tear apart and disrupt traditional value chains and therefore pose a threat to the traditional businesses. And on the one hand, that's a big opportunity for new kids on the block, new market models or business models entering a stage. But I think it's also a tremendous opportunity for established businesses to rethink what you are doing, to rethink how you're basically creating value for your customers and how that might change over the next 5 to 10 years. So the impact of digitization from our perspective is already quite evident when you look at a couple of business models that I think are all familiar with and that have evolved over the last 10 years. So for example, if I look at the traditional book market, you might all be familiar with the US book chain Borders. And they basically had quite a stable and slightly deteriorating business over the years 1999 to 2009. They sold about, they sold about 2.3 billion US dollars in 2010. And if you compare that with Amazon, and I'm only quoting the numbers here of Amazon's media business, Amazon surpasses the revenue of Borders by a factor 6 to 7 already in 2010. And as some of you might know, in February last year, Borders filed bankruptcy, and they basically completely went out of business. And that is, from my perspective, also because they partially due to the fact that they're, to a certain extent, ignored that digitization has enabled others to enter into their space, and that they basically complemented their traditional business model at the right point in time in order to also ride that wave. Another example I think that's also quite impressive is if you look at the CD business. You see that the CD business, and I'm now talking here about the physical CDs, in 2010, about 2.8 billion songs have been sold if you assume 12 songs per CD. If you compare that with the number of iTunes songs sold in 2010, that is a factor of 5 to 6 that surpasses the sales of physical CDs. And iTunes only went into business in 2004, and since its inception had an incredible growth story. So when we talk about digitization, that is something that is real, and where new business models pose, on the one hand, a threat to the traditional ones who haven't, at the right point in time, changed their business model accordingly. And those are not only examples that basically stem from the internet wave in 1999-2000, but we see that more and more of those business models are emerging. And one of the examples you might be familiar with is WhatsApp. And WhatsApp is a service where you can send messages over IP, so basically bypassing the traditional telecommunications operators' text messages or multimedia messaging services. And I quote here an example from the Netherlands and from the local brand Hi, because Hi is a brand, it's a subsidiary of KPN, and it's a brand that it's targeted at a very young audience that is very tech-savvy and known for its innovativeness. And over a period of about 9 months, the penetration rate of WhatsApp within the Hi customer base went up from 5% to 85%. And that is, on the one hand, you can say, well, that's great. I mean, WhatsApp has now new customers. What does that do to Hi's business? And that is basically, if you look at the text message business of Hi over the same period of time, they were still growing at the time when WhatsApp entered the marketplace. They were still growing at single-digit growth in the text message space, and that has gone down to minus 24% in Q3 last year, and the number has even increased over the last couple of months. So you see that the traditional business model can be easily put under threat if you basically ignore the developments that we are all facing here. User behavior is, I think, the key to what is accepted and also how the world is changing and how we need to adapt our business systems in order to cater for the needs of customers. And also, again, a couple of examples. I mean, 2 years ago, the tablet PC market was more or less a niche market. Not a lot of people owned a tablet PC by then. With the market launch of the iPad, we really saw a huge game-changing move here, and people adopted basically their behavior, changed their behavior. They loved the look and feel, they loved the user experience of the iPad, and a lot of other companies now followed. And I mean, we've seen in the presentations yesterday and also today how many companies are now present in the tablet market. And by now, after, I'd say, 2 years of the basically exponential growth of tablet PCs, almost 20% of the US population owns such a tablet PC. Another fact that I want to draw your attention to is how the use of mobile phones and the mobile internet has changed over the last couple of years. And that is, if you look at the EU5 numbers only, over the last year, more than 14 million customers have basically done online retailing over their mobile device. So I'm not talking about the normal e-commerce over the PC. I'm really talking about mobile commerce, where basically companies have launched business models offering products to customers via the mobile channel only. And that basically is a development, I think, that we will see more and more, because from our perspective, the mobile data and the mobile retailing component will become prevalent in the next couple of years. And I think that is exactly the challenge that a lot of companies face already today, and where traditional retailers try to compete with the e-tailers in their space in order to stay relevant for their customers. There's also another example that I would like to share with you from Best Buy in the US, where they have basically launched an application that user can register with. And if you allow them to do so, if you enter a store, they immediately recognize you. If you have, for example, previously done a product search for a new TV set, they guide you immediately to the aisle with the TVs, and then you can see whether your favorite TV set is available, whether it's on stock. And I think the impressive example that is embedded in that application is that you just scan the barcode, and you don't get only the information of whether the TV set is available in that Best Buy store, but you get immediately the price comparison of the biggest competitors. So you could, for example, see that your favorite TV set is available at Best Buy for $499, and Amazon, for example, sells it for $479. And it basically allows you to make the trade-off decision whether you want to take this TV set now away, carry it home, and enjoy your new TV experience the same evening, or you order it online, you save $20, perhaps you have to pay an additional shipping fee, and you have to wait another day, 2, 3 days until it's delivered to your home. In addition to that, they also offer you, should the TV set not be available in that specific store that you're currently in, that they show you the route to the next Best Buy store where this specific product is available. And I think the interesting thing about that is it all seems very nice and easy to offer something like that. Customers enjoy the usability, the user experience of such applications, but it also is a huge challenge for the organization, on the one hand, to collect the right data, make it available to that application, and also organize the logistics behind that. And I think that is where the real challenge then also of the future lies. So the business opportunities they do not only lie in the customer interface, but also in how you enhance your internal productivity. For example, the virtual prototyping in the automotive industry has really been a step change in automotive development. Previously, the car industry had to produce a prototype out of wood or any kind of other material in a really month-long process to optimize its shape and aerodynamic characteristics. Today, that's done at a mouse click online in the 3D application. It also allows you to tap into new value pools. For example, in the health industry, and that might be an example that scares some of you off, but that is something that definitely in the next couple of years we will see more and more and more, that sensors are basically built into a couple of our devices, and there will be specific devices for body condition monitoring. They basically monitor your blood pressure, they monitor your body temperature, etc. And there are already insurance companies thinking about models that they, for example, say when you're in a serious health condition and you do something about that in addition to traditional medical treatment or medication, but you also change your diet, you change basically your physical fitness, that this is rewarded with basically a bonus on your insurance fee, which again offers new opportunities, but again also threats to our privacy that I think we all want to protect and we are all very, very concerned about. So the business opportunities you can basically see are along 3 different dimensions. It's about the right customer insights that you translate into opportunities for you, opportunities in product development. It's about new business development, really thinking about what is the new opportunity that I can tackle, and it's also about the productivity increases or productivity enhancements. So here we see that digitization offers a lot of opportunity along a variety of dimensions. And we have basically thought about, well, how far advanced are various industries with that development? And to what extent do the industries take advantage of these developments? And we basically looked into 4 different dimensions for that. And we looked at, if you look at the production process, be it a production process of a physical product as well as the production process of services, how do companies procure their ingredients for the production process? How do they steer the production process itself, and how do they sell? And to what extent is this whole process supported by their own business processes in a digital fashion? And if you look at those 4 dimensions, then it's, on the one hand, not surprisingly, you see that, that industries like financial and insurances and computer and electronics are pretty far advanced on the digitization scale. And you see that other industries like consumer goods or also distribution, basically they are not, in construction, they're not basically that far advanced, which is also lying basically in their, the root cause for that is lying in the product spectrum, that of course consumer goods and construction is more a physical product-oriented industry, whereas finance and insurance is much more a service-oriented industry, where it's easier to digitize products. Nevertheless, we see there's a lot of way to go for those industries, basically to pick up and take advantage of the developments. And there's also quite a good risk for some of the companies within the industries to be left behind in these developments. And if you then look not only at the industries, but also look at individual regions, then I think there's another very important component that comes into play, because companies can only offer certain digitized services or products if also the environment allows them to do so. Is the consumer ready to do so? Is the infrastructure in place? And is the connectivity basically offered in the way we need it to offer a sufficient user experience? Because that is ultimately what it all boils down to. And you see that when we investigated for the different countries, how far advanced are they with the ubiquity of the availability of internet services and connectivity, affordability of that service, so can everyone in that country afford the service. It's also about how reliable it is and what speeds are offered. And it's also how easy is it to use? How easy can I basically imply it in my daily life? And also for businesses, how easily can they deploy it into their business processes? And perhaps not surprisingly, the 5 countries that came out highest in that survey is basically Norway and Iceland, followed by South Korea, Switzerland, and the US. And if you even look at Hong Kong as a separate entity and separated from the rest of China, it would even fit in between South Korea and Switzerland on rank 4 here. And why is that important? So if you look at economic development and what value is attached to digitization and digitized business models, you see that basically in more advanced or less advanced countries, increasing the digitization index by 10% means an increase in GDP between 0.5 and 0.6%. And if you then look at the global number of the contribution, the value contribution that digitized services already contribute to our global GDP, we are already having a number here for last year of $400 billion US. And that number is now rapidly increasing over the next couple of years. And in the year 2020, we foresee that already being in the range of a two-digit trillion number. So the outlook. From our perspective, we are really just at the beginning of a very, very long and interesting and exciting journey. And we have basically cut this journey into different eras where we think, what are the things that will influence or impact basically our daily lives and how it will change the way we use digital services. And at the moment, we think we're at the beginning of the exponential growth path of the smart cloud era. And from our perspective, the starting point has been the introduction of the iCloud service by Apple last year in October. As with the iPhone, as with the iPad, I think Apple has really achieved a game change in each of those categories. It has achieved the game change of smartphones 5 years back, and the tablet PC market 2 years back. And the same from our perspective is true for smart cloud, that we will more and more on the private as well as the professional side live in our smart cloud. This era will be followed by the era of what we call era of working nomads. And that means that by 2014-15, we assume about 40 to 45% of the global workplaces being home office enabled. So basically 40 to 45% of the work could be done at home. And that is also on the one hand enabled by more and more cloud services that are offered, because then it's easier for any device to connect to that cloud and basically do my work without additional equipment. So I could do it with my private device, or I only have one device that I carry between home and work. And that will be followed by the era of the sensor economy. And sensor economy, what is meant by that? As I mentioned earlier on in the e-health example, more and more devices are basically equipped with environmental aware or location aware sensors, or sensors that can monitor your body functions. And those sensors will take on more and more work in the background and basically support our daily lives. And by 2014-15, we think that we have so many sensor-enabled devices in place that this will become a completely normal part of our life, which today might sound a little bit scary for all of us. And by 2016-17, we would think that we enter an era of really on life. We know that for the last 10 years, there have been a lot of talk about, well, we will be online anywhere, everywhere, but I don't know what your experience is. My experience is being on certain autoroutes, on certain trains, connection breaks down completely. Being in certain buildings in the middle of a big city, even connection breaks down. Over the next 3, 4, 5 years, with the advent of the new mobile standard LTE, also with new fiber services rolled out on the fixed line, we see more and more hybrid networks developing, where we will not care about a mobile or a fixed connection anymore in 3 to 4 years from now, but we will just be online regardless of where we are. Our devices will connect with the next available Wi-Fi, with the next available mobile network, and we basically pay the fixed fee for that, and there will be no incremental cost for basically connecting in different places, and it will just be the standard of being connected at high speeds. And this standard of being connected anywhere, with any device, and plus the sensor economy, will lead to what we call the era of Internet of Things, meaning that machine-to-machine communication will then basically account for more interactions on the internet than the interactions by human beings. So we will have more transactions that are automatically steered in the background, and that will then ultimately lead on to the era of semantic networks. And semantic networks is basically an era where we have artificial intelligence embedded in the internet that will basically draw on the information collected by the different sensors, the information on the machine-to-machine communication, so that in 10 years from now, hopefully when we will all sit here and together, we'll look back and we'll basically cannot imagine that we have been living in the world how we know it today. This transformation will happen in waves. And if you look at those waves, basically we have at the moment the period where we look at the cost and where we basically manage our OPEX of trying to grab hold and get a foot into the door of the digital age. This will be followed basically by tomorrow's growth. Those are basically the topics where today's venture capitalists invest their capex in, and where they look for new business models and companies that basically, for example, when you look at the e-health example, today we are talking about e-records for people, and in 3 to 5 years from now, we are really looking at a more connected health system where you not only have an individual record of your health card, but where basically also all the pharmacies, the doctors, the hospitals are connected in a way that you will also receive a superior health service from that. And that is what we will see in 3 to 5 years. And then we'll come to the era 5 to 10 years, based on the different eras that I just described, where you have a much more transformational impact, and where this whole service has a much more transformational impact. So the pace for these developments depends on various socioeconomic drivers. As we also see with all the presentations that we've seen yesterday and also in this morning, technology is seldom a factor that hinders development. From a technology perspective, a lot of things are possible, and we are not facing a world where technology will limit us in the things that we are doing. But when you, for example, look at the mobile payments, we are talking about mobile payment systems for 15 years now, and it has never come about. And why is that the case? 15 years ago, from a technology perspective, mobile payment would have been possible. We could have paid bills instead of a credit card with our mobile phones. But there were, on the one hand, regulatory limitations. Mobile phone companies were not allowed to do that or to extend into the mobile payment system beyond a certain point without a banking license. So there was basically a point where they couldn't move forward without doing that. So cooperation with banks would have been the answer. But for the banks, there was a huge threat to share their revenue pie and their profit pie with a new player in the market. So it was a huge fight about how could the business models come together and come about, which ultimately led to the situation that we are still in, that we still have no consistent cross-country working mobile payment system. But ultimately, also one of the key things when regulators have basically taken care of the environment, when industries figure out what the right business model is, ultimately what it all boils down to is us, the consumer. Whether we are ready to accept that, whether we think this is a service where the trade-off between giving away data and giving away on our privacy concerns, where there's a trade-off of the value add that we gain from that new service. And I think that is where we will all see, and where it's the most important barrier to the development and the speed of the development that we see going forward. So what does that mean for the different stakeholders? For us consumers, basically, we need to take a very, very conscious decision to what extent we are willing to step into that new digitized world, and to what extent the digitized world will enhance our daily lives, that we are willing to make these trade-offs and give away some of the privacy that is required in order to make a lot of the things I spoke about work. For the industry, I think a lot of things also have to change, and industry CEOs have to think about what are the new capabilities that are required in order to serve the customer in a way that on the one hand allows me to do my business in a more efficient and effective way, but also provide a user experience that combines the benefits of the analog offline world with the new benefits of the digital world, because ultimately I think an online only or an offline only model we will not see anymore in 5 to 10 years from now. We will only have converged models that take advantage of these both sides. And of course we need government and regulation. We need governments to provide us with the right environment and allow companies also to do the right things, and governments need to make the right trade-off of how do they protect the consumer interests and balance it with what the industry can do in certain areas in order to capture the next wave of growth and the next growth opportunity. So thank you very much for your attention. I will be around for the rest of the day, so if you have any questions, if that presentation has sparked any interest on your end, I would be happy to continue any discussion in the course of the day and also take any questions later on. Thank you very much.